The Hearts of Gold podcast is brought to you by the Grow and Share Network, produced by Off the Walter Media Productions.
Welcome to Hearts of Gold. Today we have Sabrina with us. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi.
Can you tell us about your Girl Scout Gold Award project?
Yeah, so my project is Speech for Success, and I'm very much into public speaking. It actually started in kindergarten when I first joined Girl Scouts, and simply, I was very quiet. I was very shy. My teachers had a hard time getting me to talk in class, and when joining Girl Scouts by asking, would you like to buy a box of Girl Scout cookies, I sort of developed the public speaking skills. And in middle school, I joined my school speech and debate team. I was a part of the first team we had. And then when I went to high school, I once again joined. I was the first freshman from my school to make it to speech and debate nationals. And while I was there, I saw that categories, very popular categories, were male dominated, including the category I was competing in. There was a round I was in where I was the only female presenting person in the room. And that kind of surprised me. I was surprised. And so that inspired me to make a women-centric speech and debate meet. And so Speech for Success was born in Dallas at Nationals. And my coach, my speech and debate coach, is also a Girl Scout leader, not my Girl Scout leader, but is also one. And so she was like, make it your Gold Award. And that's how that happened. So this year, 2020, we put that together. It is the first ever girl-centric meet, even though there have been boy-centric meets. And we hosted it virtually. I actually got quarantined the day before I was able to do my meet. So I had to do it completely virtually from a separate location from my coach and the tabulation team I had. And I plan on doing again this year, this fall, and hopefully in person. So it will be both the first virtual girl-centric meet as well as the first in-person girl-centric meet, which is very exciting.
What kind of feedback did you get from the girls that participated?
I did it early enough in the season that it could still be novice and varsity, because that's how speech and debate is split up. It's usually point-based. Sometimes it's just based on your grade, because in speech and debate, you earn points that follow you through your lifetime. And so there were some people I knew who, hey, I earned a bunch of points in middle school. And because I had novices point-based, they were sort of pushed into varsity. And they were like, I'm a freshman. I just was really, really active my middle school year. And now I'm in varsity. And so as someone who did a middle school speech and debate and then went on to it in high school, there are some obvious differences. And so I imagine that being able to more easily sort that out would better those girls who are coming in as freshmen with a lot of points, but no high school experience in speech and debate. So that helped, as well as learning more about the tabulation system. It was very unfamiliar to all of us. Virtual meets were unfamiliar to all of us. I hosted this in like October, November. And so at that point we were like, yeah, by January we'll have in-person meets. And then I think a couple weeks later, they announced that nationals would also be online that year. And so we all sort of like very abruptly had to learn this new system. Including me with my system that I was using. I was originally planning on using a completely different tabulation system, but unfortunately, because of COVID, they had to shut down, so we had to move to a new one.
What are the biggest differences when you do a debate virtually versus in person?
I think one of the biggest differences, which is why I really want to do this meet in person, is the camaraderie. You are in a speech meet from 6 a.m. That's when you get on the bus at your school and leave and go to your meet until after dinner, after 6 p.m. And you're not actually speaking for 12 hours. You're probably only speaking for about an hour. You have maybe 4 rounds with maybe 10 minutes of speaking. And all that downtime is time that you are with your team, time you're with other competitors, and you learn a lot from each other. And that camaraderie is why I wanted to make my meet for women and gender nonconforming students, to be able to come together, have one place where, because all of us have stories of, oh, I was the only girl in my round. Oh, I got talked over during this round. Or, man, this was a round full of girls and the guy got first. And so to be able to come together with all those stories and to really bond and sort of create a speech and debate sisterhood, that's what I wanted. And unfortunately, because it was virtual, that really can't be achieved like it can in person. So that, I think, was the major difference, which is why I'm so glad I fundraised enough to be able to do it again this year, and hopefully in person, because that's what I wanted. I wanted you to walk into your round and it to be just all women and wonderful and just happy that you're there with people who have similarities.
When you speak about the camaraderie that you build when you have in-person events, who are some of the people that you've met and built relationships with from previous events?
Even just on my team, my very best friend, we really met and bonded through speech and debate. She is absolutely my best friend. She actually helped me with this meet. She's not a Girl Scout herself, but she was definitely my core volunteer. But I think beyond that, some of my fellow competitors, and speech and debate is for first day of freshman year and your last day of senior year. So you have a lot of people coming in, and I know people who were much older than me who were admiring whether it is my skill set, whether it's just the dress I'm wearing the day I'm competing. So coming together with things like that. At nationals, I got to meet me and my team. It was my team's first ever year, my school's first ever year going to nationals. I was the first ever freshman to go. And so we all made it a goal that each of us wanted to find someone from all 50 states. And so I made that my goal, and I was sitting in a hallway and I was like, yeah, I haven't met anyone from Hawaii. And a guy down the hall was like, I'm from Hawaii. And I'm like, perfect. You're my number 48. Like, there we go. And so just little things like that, where I was like, I finally met someone from Hawaii. I can stick it to my team. I got the first person to 50 people, things like that, of like just in passing in rounds. There have like absolutely been a moment where like someone is competing I'm in speech mostly. And so there'll be a debate round next door, and we'll you're in a classroom, the walls can end up kind of thin. And if you sit in the back, you'll sometimes hear the person next door. And in some events, people scream, and in some events, people are much quieter, but you can still kind of hear them. And so to exit around, and then to be like, hey, were you the one that was screaming? And just little moments like that have really made my speech and debate career, the sort of things that I do. I'm like, oh, I love going to this meet because this school is the only time we ever see this school, and they're so much fun to hang out with.
Competing locally, regionally versus nationally, what was that national debate? How was that debate and speech and debate conference different than your regular school year-round events?
The style. The event I'm currently in was brand new to Indiana my freshman year. No one really knew what it was or what it should look like. And so by going to the national stage, you get to see the final rounds. You get to see the top 6 people in that category, a category none of us have any idea about. And to watch that, I was like, that's what that can be. It's sort of learning about the different ways that people do things, a completely different interpretation. And so that's the main difference. Just stylistically watching people do things a completely different way from you. It's great for learning. It's very entertaining. And like some categories are offered at the national level, but they aren't offered locally. So there's one, storytelling, where you convey a children's book. You take 5 minutes to do it. You have to use a chair, things like that. It's a weird category, and it only happens at nationals. And I love doing it. I'm like, hey, I can finally perform Green Eggs and Ham, a book I've been reading my entire life. Or, hey, this is a very relevant book to life right now, so I would like to perform that. And at nationals, you're able to do that. At Indiana, no one's offering that, so you aren't able to do that. And actually, because of the virtual season, we were able to go. I competed in Kentucky virtually. My team did one in Chicago, or in like Northern Indiana, Chicago, which normally financially for my team or just time-wise, we wouldn't be able to do that. So to have a virtual year, I got to expand and branch out more.
You spoke about fundraising and in support of your event. Can you tell us how you fundraised and what those funds paid for?
I asked people to buy a round. So speech and debate is run in rounds, and I wanted people to sponsor events. So I reached out on social media to local businesses, to speech and debate alumni, people that I knew from speech and debate, in Girl Scouts. And for $5, they could buy a single round. And for $20, they could sponsor an entire category. I was completely fundraised within about an hour. So the funding for buying a round, in the virtual season, we had to pay to play. We had to pay to compete, which has never happened. In Indiana, it's usually free. There are some meets where obviously it isn't. There's some special meets where it isn't. But in Indiana, it usually is. And this year was different. And I didn't want there to be a financial block for any student. So if I could make it free, I wanted to. And the money paid for tabulations to run the tabulation system, which is a cost per entry per round. So that as I was getting more students to come in, I think I ended up with over 100 entries. Each of those entries cost me money in each of those rounds that those entries did. And then ribbons. I really like having ribbons. And because of the virtual season, we really didn't have them this year, but I really wanted to do it. And I worked with a local gift and trophy company, and they did ribbons for actually a neighboring school. And they were like, hey, this is what we did for them. And it was exactly perfect what I needed for mine. I did ribbons for the top 10 competitors. I did ribbons for any Girl Scout who was participating. They could submit that if they were Girl Scout. So every Girl Scout got a participatory ribbon. And then I was able to make enough money. I was able to buy this year's ribbons and trophies for the top team, which was something I didn't imagine I could do. And I was able to do it. And I'm very, very happy with that.
What is your favorite memory from your project?
I think the inspiration where it came from, being at nationals and seeing this and getting kind of like riled up and like kind of angry of like, how you're at the final stage, you're at the top 6 competitors and none of them are girls. What do you mean? And to see the people around me be like, yeah, that it, like what? And just sort of all season long, I'm in a male dominated category. And so all season I was like, I'm the one girl in the room, or there was like another girl. It's like, oh my gosh. And we would both sort of like talk of like, they interrupt us. We have very respectful competitors, but you don't always have respectful competitors. Sort of build into that. I can say that in retrospect, finding out I was quarantined the day before, I was literally in school talking to my coach, who's also my Girl Scout sponsor, and her phone in her classroom rang and she picked it up. And then she was like, you need to stand in the hallway. And I was like, what? And we were so confused. And then one of the assistant principals came down, and he's like the angel of death for our school. Like he comes and he grabs everyone when they're quarantined. And I was just like, oh, this couldn't have waited till Monday, because my speech was run on a Saturday and I was in school on a Friday. I was like, this couldn't have waited till Monday, could it? And I was not allowed to be in the school property. I was not allowed to go into any school events, including my own meet. It was already virtual at that point, but I was still expecting to be with my volunteers. So we had to run, like at one point I had like 3 Zooms open to like the team, the tabulation, and then like sort of like a judge's meeting room. And I was just like, this is not how I expected it to go. But in retrospect, it went fine. It went well. And that prepared me to be quarantined. I did not expect to get quarantined, most especially that day. That was the most inconvenient quarantine ever.
What did you learn from having to have 3 Zoom meetings running at the same time?
I learned how to be organized. I think throughout this meet, all these obstacles that came up, sort of learning how to problem solve them, because, June of 2019, when I was first getting this idea, it was, of course, we didn't even know what a virtual meet was, let alone COVID. And then as we moved into June of 2020, where it's, hey, it's going to be this upcoming season, that's what I want to do. It was, well, do we have a backup? Like if it ends up being virtual, how are we going to do that? What's the money difference on that one? And by August, we knew it would be full virtual. So to be able to sort of prepare your expectations, because obviously what I planned in June of 2019 did not execute in November of 2020, to be able to plan your expectations, to be able to stay organized. It was, hey, this was the original plan. Let's keep moving through it, and to be able to problem solve. If anything were to happen to my Gold Award, of course I get quarantined the day before. Like that was just like another thing where I was like, I guess. And so having to move through that and navigate that taught me a lot about organization, as well as like my own ability to be like, all right, let it happen.
So excluding the need to pivot because of quarantine and COVID, both of those, you had 2 different major pivots. What did you learn as you went through the Gold Award process that you could share with others to encourage them through the process?
Is kind of unrelated to my project. It's just about sort of any big commitment that you're doing is to stay on top of it and to stay organized. That helped me through like I was in a hybrid schedule at my school. So having half of my year virtual, I have to stay self-motivated. I have to stay on top of my assignments when there's no one, down my shoulder. Gold awards are largely self-sufficient, not quite independent, because you're obviously supposed to be a leader of a team. But to be able to lead yourself, you can then lead others. And so beyond what happened with COVID and my Gold Award, to be able to have enough confidence in myself, my abilities, to be able to problem solve, all of these things attributed to me being able to, and keep my sanity when doing so, complete my Gold Award.
In addition to now being a Gold Award Girl Scout and receiving recognition from that, when you were younger, you also received some recognition from another activity. Can you tell us about that?
I completely attributed this to Girl Scout as well, because without selling cookies as a kindergartner, I would not have enough confidence to be on the Food Network. I was on the Food Network in 2015 through about 2018. I was on 3 different shows: Rachel Ray's Kids Cook-Off, Beat Bobby Flay as a judge, and then an episode of Guy's Grocery Games. And those have been amazing, life-changing experiences. And I could not have done it without the confidence that Girl Scouts gave me. And I have said this in every audition, every interview. They are always like, "Oh, you're in front of a camera. How are you going to?" When I was very little, when I first auditioned at 11 years old, they said, "Are you nervous around cameras?" And I said, probably not. I'm probably not. I'm very good at talking. I like to do this. And you're a child. How do you do that? Most children are very shy or very reserved, or when they're talkative with their friends. And I said, even then on that audition, I said it was Girl Scouts, without asking, "Would you like to buy a box of Girl Scout cookies?" to thousands of strangers to try to reach my goal of 1,000 cookies. I would not have public speaking skills like I do now.
What is something that you learned by being on the Food Network programs that you didn't know about television?
How much behind the scenes there is, especially because I started at such a young age. The TV magic was still there. And so there was like 2 judges and I was making 4 plates, and that had to be explained to me. So things like that. And like I had to learn like what a call time was, or it had to be explained to me that that you don't eat the food immediately. The judge gets the food an hour later, and you just have to hope that the gravy holds. I knew food very well as a kid. And so to be able to apply it into that sense, it's a little bit different. It's not just knowing food, it's knowing how food keeps, lasts, looks. So sort of expanding my knowledge on food as well as industry and public speaking again.
What tips do you have for us at-home cooks?
Don't be afraid to try new things. I'm often asked this question of like, what advice do you have for kids? And for me, it's don't be afraid to try new things. My first recipe was put it in a pot, stick it in the oven, leave it alone. And that developed into sort of a skill set for me. But it took me, I was making bourbon glazed pork chops before I knew how to properly fry an egg. So being able to sort of engage where your skill set's at, like maybe you're not good at making scrambled eggs. I still do not. Like, my family knows my brother makes good scrambled eggs. I do not. And so being able to know that about yourself, but know, hey, I can make a pretty good filet mignon. I can make a really great. So being able to sort of gauge where your skill set's at. I'm constantly looking to try new things. I mostly focused on American or French cooking when I was younger, and now I'm much more interested in vegan and Eastern cooking. And so letting yourself change and letting yourself grow and develop. And I've had some failed recipes. I've had some terrible recipes. I, of course, made bread all throughout quarantine like most everyone else. And I had some bread that did not turn out, but my friend told me a bad bread makes a good crouton. So I think if I can give any advice, a bad bread will still make a good crouton. So applying that to cooking.
How do you decide what to make when you're given a few ingredients and no other direction?
I do what I want. If I'm given, a pasta and a tomato, I'm probably going to be making a tomato sauce, my favorite tomato sauce. I want to do what I want. And so whatever inspires me from those ingredients, or if I'm given a random set of ingredients and like one of them happens to be something I'm craving, that's going to be the star of the dish.
What other Girl Scout experiences have you had?
Like many girls, I went on a Savannah trip. I've also had some very unique experiences. In 2016, I actually moved, and it was no longer easy, or I was no longer able to go to my previous troop. So I also had to move troops completely. So there were these girls I was growing up from kindergarten until I think that point was sixth grade, from kindergarten to sixth grade. And then I suddenly had to completely go to a different troop, which then brought me new and different opportunities and some of my great friends now. Every girl goes to Savannah, but not every girl's experience is a whole life gets uplifted. And now I have a completely different group of friends. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I was in Puerto Rico on a Girl Scout trip. We originally were planning for Europe. Because of COVID, that wasn't an option, but we changed gears and we went to Puerto Rico. And actually, because of the cost difference in a 2-week European trip compared to a 1-week Puerto Rican trip, we were all able to afford cameras. So now we're all going into college with just very, very basic cameras, but we're going in with that new skill level. And we also got our senior pictures taken there. So that was a little like bonus surprise. And I've also been a delegate for Girl Scouts. I am currently a delegate for Girl Scouts. I was in the 2021 session that happened earlier this year.
What did you learn from being a delegate?
I learned patience from being a delegate. It was virtual, like many things. It was supposed to be in Orlando, which included a day at Disney. And then it was virtual. So sorry, that was October 2020. That was not earlier this year. So learning patience, it was, I think, 30 hours of Zoom calls. And before one of the sessions, I had to take the ACT, which is a standardized test that you use for college admissions and things. So I like walk out of the ACT, which is a very like grueling test. Like I had a friend who was like, yeah, I canceled my plans for the entire day that day. And then I had to go and be a delegate until about midnight that day. So I learned sort of patience and how to sort of pace myself as I want to pay attention. And a lot of the bills that were discussed would be relevant to me as an older Girl Scout, which I was very, very interested in advocating for, because as you get older, sometimes it seems it teeters out with how many things that you can do. And so to see them so interested in providing more activities for us older girls, I was very excited. I was very invested.
You mentioned that you moved after sixth grade. Sixth grade is a year, fifth and sixth grade are years where a lot of girls leave Girl Scouts. What motivated you when you moved to find a new troop? And what should girls consider as to why they should continue to stay in Girl Scouts, even if they don't move? A lot of times schools change, and so your troops change because of school changes or other activities. What should girls think about?
I think the only year every single girl in my Girl Scout troop went to the same school was the first year at kindergarten. After that, we had girls who would go into a different school in the same district, but a different school. And then as we reached middle school, we were all in different schools. When I moved, I was the only one from my area. They were in the same council as me, but I was the only one who went to my school. And even now in high school, we go to 3 different high schools, but we're like less than 10 miles apart from one another. Sticking it out, I definitely think is worth it. I think the benefits are there because I have an amazing group of friends that I go to. We do Monday meetings. And so I just started my school week and now I get to go to Girl Scouts. It creates a bit of a schedule for yourself. It creates a bit of a rhythm to get into, as well as the things that the patches alone teach us. I know at the 6th grade level, I teach a cooking badge, the cooking badge for that one. And that is my favorite cooking badge to teach because I think it's the most interesting out of all the cooking badges that I do teach. And so I think sticking it out for the patches and the people that you're with, because you can learn so much. I think 6th grade is when their first budgeting badge is, which is to budget like how to buy your car or something. If I recall correctly, it could be like a vacation thing. So these life skills that Girl Scouts is willingly giving you is something that many schools don't have the opportunities to do. The school I moved from did not have any college or career readiness classes, and the school I'm currently at does. But without Girl Scouts, I wouldn't have some of the background knowledge that I had to go into those classes. We were doing career readiness and budgeting classes, patches, in Girl Scouts before I did them in school. And so I think staying for the life lessons, staying for the people you meet, that is something I would absolutely recommend. And often I'm like, I had a 2 degrees outside. I had a cookie booth. And then we had our meeting, I think the next day. And I was like, I am so tired. Oh, and it was finals week. And I was like, I am so tired. I'm so done. But I get to go see my friends in Girl Scouts, and that made it worth it.
Did you happen to do the So What journey? And if so, what did you do?
We ended up talking about, that one is very much based in like gardening and very, very relevant topics to like ethical sourcing of food. And obviously I love it, all about culinary and things like that. So that one was I was very interested in that. And it turns out so was the rest of my troop. So we all did it together, which that was my jam. Like when we did that, I was like, yes, food. And so to discuss these things that being in the culinary industry, I hear a lot about, and I didn't realize that it would be a new topic for them. There was like discussion of like, what's your state's, like just some questionnaire things like, what's your state number one product? And I know that Indiana is the number one producer of duck, and they had no idea. And so things like that I had a lot of insight going into made it really, really fun for me. We ended up doing a sort of a presentation project we split it up with one another. And I think I ended up doing kind of like milk alternatives because I'm lactose intolerant. And so basically like what goes in your coffee cup can end up not helping you or can end up doing amazing things, and sort of like where it comes from in the earth and where it ends up in you.
I'm in rural Wisconsin, and the girls love that journey here. They often do. We have a lot of organic farms. We have a lot of CSAs around here. So there's lots of opportunities to put different spins on that journey. It's our favorite journey to do in this area.
I really enjoyed it. And I know people who are like in 4-H, and one of the girls' dad is a restaurant owner and like a chef at a restaurant. So from all these different perspectives coming in, it was a lot of fun to do.
Where are you going in your future?
I'm currently a senior in high school. I actually, earlier this month, I applied to the University of Alabama. So I'm waiting to hear back from them. I hope to continue with speech and debate into college. And I hope to get a degree in gastronomy, which is food science, food history, food media. So all the things that I'm very, very interested in learning, and then food, sort of coming together at that and hopefully getting a master's degree in it.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
I think there's a lot of pressure behind doing a gold, silver, bronze award, of like having a project that's big enough or exciting enough or world changing and things like that. And while those are important sort of goals to have, for me, it just started as this is something I'm interested in. For my silver award, which I did independently, for my silver award, I self-published a little like book, kind of like a cookbook, but it's basically just a cookbook pamphlet. And that just started as this is something I'm interested in. This is something I want to do. This is something I want to share. And I think the importance of sharing your interests should absolutely be a concept that's explored in gold, silver, and bronze awards. It shouldn't just be this would be helpful or this would be life-changing or world-changing. I think it should be something that you are truly invested in, because if you're putting all these hours into it, it should be something you love.
How do you make your s'mores?
I like burnt marshmallows. I like the outside to be absolutely like carbonized black, little bit of chocolate. You know, I will like split up a graham cracker. I don't really have s'mores that often, but like the burnt marshmallow is 110% like the main part of it. Then there's like some chocolate and graham cracker. But I really do. I like burnt marshmallows. Like if it can be like a small torch, that's what I'm happy with.
Well, thanks for joining us this week.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Make sure to click follow or subscribe so you always know when new episodes are released. And don't forget to power your passion and conquer your challenges.
The Hearts of Gold podcast is brought to you by the Grow and Share Network, produced by Off the Walter Media Productions. Thank you for listening and spreading the word on what we do. If you want to share your story of how you earned your Gold Award, reach out and send an email to growandsshare@outlook.com. Be sure to listen to the newest episodes on your favorite podcast app, as well as view the full video episodes on youtube.com/Cheryl M. Robinson. That's youtube.com/Cheryl, the letter M, Robinson. Take care, and we'll see you next time.